What if the mortal wound in Revelation wasn't a bullet or a palace coup at all, but a law passed in Ankara in 1924? What if the dead head everyone assumed was gone forever was actually the Ottoman Caliphate, abolished, gutted, and waiting, and now two modern leaders stand most capable of sewing that head back on: Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey and Ahmed al-Sharaa of Syria. Stay with me, because the trail of evidence and circumstantial breadcrumbs shows us the exact playbook they could use to make the whole world marvel. Listen close. The wound we're talking about today is blunt and date-stamped. On March 3, 1924, the Grand National Assembly of Turkey abolished the Ottoman Caliphate. That act removed the last widely recognized caliphal office that for centuries had claimed political and spiritual headship across wide parts of the Muslim world. It was not a symbolic note scribbled in history. It was an institutional decapitation. The last caliph was deposed, the office abolished, the central head cut off. The moment reads like a mortal wound because it was the removal of the unifying throne that had bound together vast territories of Islamic governance across the centuries. The prophetic language in Revelation, one of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, matches this perfectly. The caliphate was not just a political structure, it was political authority and religious symbolism wrapped together into one head. Its removal left behind a vacuum of legitimacy that generations of thinkers, movements, and states have struggled to fill. That cutting in 1924 stands as the clearest historical candidate for what prophecy describes as a wound that seemed fatal. But if the wound was the abolition of the caliphate, how could it be healed? Prophecy doesn't require a throne to be dug up from the past and stitched back together in its original form. Healing can be political and symbolic. A restoration so powerful, so convincing that millions treat it as if the caliphate itself has returned. Think of the difference between a body resurrected and a crown theatrically placed on a new head. The world does not need the original office to reappear. It needs a living, breathing figure who claims the mantle, gathers legitimacy, and convinces the nations. When that happens, Revelation says the earth marvels. And in our age of media spectacle, marveling is instantaneous. Consider what 1924 really meant. For over 1,000 years before its abolition, the caliphate, in various dynastic forms, carried the structural idea of supernatural Islamic leadership. The Ottoman caliphs were its last widely accepted holders. When the decree of March 1924 dissolved that office, it did not just topple a dynasty. It ripped out the symbolic spine of a civilizational identity that was the head being cut off. And ever since, the void has remained. Now look closer at the circumstantial signs that this was indeed the mortal wound. The caliphate wasn't ceremonial. It was politico-religious. Its removal took away both a political umbrella and a religious headline figure. That's why the shockwaves across the Muslim world were deep and lasting. Its abolition wasn't remembered as a regime change, but as a rupture in the story itself. It was coded into modern memory as a systemic ending. A restoration, even in symbolic form, would read like a resurrection, and the memory hasn't faded. Across the past century, Islamist movements, intellectuals, and politicians have invoked the dream of the caliphate over and over again. That lingering nostalgia ensures that any attempt to revive it wouldn't feel like a fringe project. It would resonate. This is where the modern players step in. Erdogan has spent years recentering Ottoman-era symbols and rituals into Turkey's identity. He led prayers in Hagia Sophia after converting it to a mosque in 2020, a gesture far larger than a change of architecture. It was a telegraphed message. Turkey isn't ashamed to reclaim its imperial and religious legacy. His rhetoric, his policies, his growing regional footprint all signal the same thing, that Turkey is prepared to step into a role of historic significance once again. Symbolic power, diplomatic reach, and military capability, those are the raw materials of restoration. And then there is Syria, where Ahmed al-Sharaa emerged after the Assad's regime collapsed to lead a transitional government. He moved quickly to consolidate power and form a cabinet. Damascus, the capital he controls, is not just a city. It is ancient, central, and dripping with prophetic resonance. Whoever holds Damascus holds a seat of legitimacy that stretches beyond borders. Reports show al-Sharaa consolidating authority, building a functioning cabinet, pulling together armed groups into state structures, all the steps of someone preparing a stable stage for something much larger. Put these two together and a playbook emerges that looks frighteningly real. Erdogan provides the resources, the narrative, the global reach. Al-Sharaa provides the ground, the historic city, the symbolic seat. Together, they'll choreograph a restoration that feels like the Caliphate reborn. Turkey, continuing to reclaim Ottoman spaces and projecting neo-imperial imagery, Damascus becomes the stage for a public act of restoration. Religious leaders are convened to endorse a supranational council. A ceremony is staged with global cameras rolling, and suddenly the headlines read, "The Caliphate is back. The wound is healed." This isn't fantasy. These are observable moves. Hagia Sophia has already been reconverted. Ottoman history is already being taught and celebrated again in Turkey. Turkish influence is already spreading across the Mediterranean and the Levant. Al-Sharaa has already formed a transitional cabinet and consolidated executive power in Damascus. These are not abstract prophecies. These are chess pieces already in motion. And here's the chilling alignment with Revelation. The text never says the wound could not be imitated. It only says it seemed fatal, and that the whole world would marvel when it was healed. What could be more astonishing, more globally visible than a staged restoration of the Caliphate, unveiled in Damascus or Istanbul, broadcast live to billions? The spectacle itself would fulfill the prophecy. Now step back and look at the larger drama. Revelation separates the beast from the harlot. The beast is the political religious power. The harlot is the seductive force of commerce and culture that rides it. The harlot intoxicates nations with wealth, with pleasure, with her enticements. If you want to see how modern America fulfills that harlot role 110%, go watch the pinned breakdown in my profile called America is Babylon. It connects the dots verse by verse, headline by headline. Together, the beast and the harlot play out their roles on the world stage. The Caliphate's abolition was the wound. A restoration, staged, symbolic, and broadcast to the world, would be the healing. And if Erdogan and al-Sharaa even attempt this, prophecy says the world will marvel. The question is not if it can happen, the question is how soon. So if this opened your eyes, if this helped you see the world through a more of a prophetic lens, please share it so others can wake up. Spread it and comment your thoughts as well. And above all, stay watchful. God bless you and your family and these United States. And shalom, shalom, brothers and sisters. Maranatha.